Hey folks, Randy Newberg here with another episode of Leupold's Hunt Talk Radio. Today we are going to have guests, three of them, who are on the board of directors of a new nonprofit group called the North American Pronghorn Foundation. And I could not be more excited than I am to see a group come out to advocate for one of my favorite species, the North American pronghorn. So we've been trying to get this done, lining up calendars for me and three other people. I'm always the problem in that. But we've got it. Hopefully, it'll go well this time. Two other times we've had technical difficulties. And so this is our third go around. And I really appreciate these guys being so patient and persistent and helpful. But the whole idea of this is our platforms are designed to encourage people to advocate for the things they love, wild places, wild things, to give information that helps them advocate, and for those who are advocating, to give them access to a wider audience so that their advocacy can go further. And that is all wrapped up in what this podcast will be. Dean, Phil, and Eric are three members of the board of directors of the North American Pronghorn Foundation. They're going to be here, give a little bit of background of how it got going, some ideas of what the future is, and hopefully how all of you can help. Because conservation does not happen without all of you. And I always say conservation is, well, it's difficult. It's a lot of work. And these guys aren't afraid of a lot of work. Sometimes it's uncomfortable because you got to take a position that maybe your neighbor or your family member or your coworker has a different position. And it's always inconvenient because it takes time. And in today's world, we don't have a lot of time. So these guys represent their board members and their executive director, Brock, and represent a lot of you who aren't afraid of the discomfort, aren't afraid of the hard work, and you will make time even if it is inconvenient. So appreciate you all being here. They're all waiting on the other line, so I'm going to rearrange my quarters here, so I'll be organized and ready to go. But hopefully, when you read this or listen to this, or when you watch it, it'll give you some feelings about what they're doing and how you could help and how you could support, because they're willing to do the hard work. They need your voice. They need probably some of your money for membership, maybe you joining their email list or following them on one of their platforms. So we can all do something. And I hope when we're all done here, it inspires you to go out and become one of those supporters of the North American Pronghorn Foundation. So thanks for being here today. I think this will be a good discussion. Well, folks, I told you that I have with me today three volunteers who I admire greatly and who are doing amazing work on behalf of Pronghorn. And they're all looking at me on the screen, probably wondering, well, Randy, this is our third time. The first two suffered technology failures. Maybe the third time's a charm. Guys, I really apologize that we had to try this three times. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed on this end that the third time will work.
I don't doubt
Well, a
we'll get
chance
there.
to talk about pronghorn again is not a problem.
Well, for those wondering, the first time, my neighbor in my office suite here, their technology guy went and cut our fiber. We're about 35, 40 minutes into the first podcast, and all of a sudden, kaput, everything went out. Then the next time, something happened on his end. So Eric and Dean, I guess it's up to you guys to have some sort of technology failure on your end this time.
Take it back. Knock on wood. No way. We're gonna get through it.
Well, who wants to start with the background of how the three of you got this idea working with your buddy Brock to start the North American Pronghorn Foundation. Let's give the audience the quick background of how you guys got roped into this, where your passions come from, and where you see it going.
I'll take
Eric
a I'll
or
take a
team?
stab at that. The first time I saw anything about this was on Hunt Talk, and Brock had put a post out there saying, "Hey, thinking about starting up this organization. Anybody want to be involved with this?" And of course, my left hand kept my right hand from raising, but it didn't work. And all of a sudden, I'd raised my hand, it's been a fun ride. The last year or so has been a fun ride doing this, and really the reason that I got involved was that I started pronghorn hunting with my kids. My daughter was 12 years old, and then my sons, and we went out there, and they're just such a unique, fun American creature that and they don't have representation. There is no nationwide pronghorn organization, so definitely filling a gap there, and a bunch of great guys pulling together and trying to make a difference.
Cool. Well, Dean, you're based in Minnesota. Eric, you're based in Washington, right?
Yep, living in Washington State, 28-year military guy, so I feel like I've been a resident of pretty much everywhere. But yeah, no, it's been a heck of a ride. I kind of came to the organization a little backwards and a little bit late. So these guys were here on the ground floor, and I came in on floor one. Long story short, a buddy of mine and I on our first pronghorn hunt, we're driving back, and he's a biologist by trade, wildlife biologist by trade, and we were having a conversation on the 13-hour drive home, and noticed that there wasn't a pronghorn organization on the landscape. That nobody was out there advocating for pronghorn. You got Rocky Mountain Elk, you got Mule Deer Foundation, but no pronghorn foundation. We couldn't figure out why.
Mm-hmm.
And long story short, we sort of had an evolving bar napkin on the back of our minds for the 5 years, going from there. Busy life in the military, and he's working for the state. And long story short, about a year ago, we said enough is enough. And I said we got to get this going. We got to figure something out. And so I reached out to a conservation mentor of mine, and he said, "Hey, are you working with Brock Wall from North Dakota?" I'm like, "What?" No, yeah, no, but I guess I ought to be. And so I gave Brock a call, and that's how I came to the organization. And I'm thrilled to be here and thrilled to be doing the work.
Cool. Phil, how you got a similar story, or you come from different place on it?
No, pretty similar. I came through actually. David Go, who I think is a mutual acquaintance of everybody here, was just out kind of kicking up some trees. We were just bantering about pronghorn, and mentioned that the dust was getting kicked up on this project, and I think we all, as hunters, have a drive to want to be part of conservation. And pronghorn, I mean, gosh, if you want to talk about any animal to chase and hunt that really only has positive stories associated with it, it's pronghorn. They're about the most fun hunts you can get on. And he mentioned it, and I was able to hop on a call with Brock and the team here when it was starting, and that was the beginning of the end, or the beginning of the beginning, depending on how you want to look at it.
Well, I appreciate the three of you plus your whole board and Brock and everybody took this on. Some people might say, well, there used to be a North American Pronghorn Foundation, and there was back in the 90s. I was actually a member and offered to be on the board, all kinds of stuff. They're based out of Rawlins, Wyoming. And then I think guys got tired and wore out, and, they never really expanded it to a national type presence. And if I remember right, Brock told me that you guys reached out to that group and kind of sought permission to reignite the flame.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, conservation orgs, it's no easy feat. I mean, as Dean mentioned, we've been working on this for a year now, and we all want to be boots on the ground, working on projects, doing the dinners and the fun stuff. But we have two accountants on our board for a reason.
And I'm
And,
not, I'm not one
yeah,
of them.
and shopping for a lawyer, and all the other fun stuff that comes with this. So yes, biology, and that's where our heart is. But just like being a small business owner, really your day's caught up in payroll and fixing leaks in the building and everything like that. So
Yeah,
I understand why some of these orgs don't make it past 2, 3, 4, 5 years, because it takes momentum, and it takes a large group of volunteers and people realizing that it's not always standing on the prairie grass looking at pronghorn. There's a lot of board calls and begging for money and all the other things that go along the process.
you
Phil,
guys, you guys see me smiling as you're saying that, Phil, but all of you know how much work is going on behind the scenes and has went on behind the scenes for the last year just to get ready for the launch that you guys have.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to mention that is that the amount of paperwork and the filing for this and the filing for that, and I mean it to do it right, do it correctly, and get lawyers involved and everything else. It just takes a lot of time. We all would have loved to, hey, let's do this, and a month later we're out doing projects on the landscape. It doesn't work that way. And what Phil said about how those, a lot of organizations only make it 2 or 3 or 5 years or whatever. I bet it's orders of magnitude more that never get to launch.
Yeah,
They fizzle before the amount of work it takes to even get to launch. They just go under.
yeah. Well, I know how busy the three of you are. There's an old saying that says, if you want something done, ask the busiest person in town. And Dean, you said you tried to not raise your hand, but there's just something about people like the three of you and Brock and the rest of your board where, let's face it, it's hard to say no to a cause that is important, that needs a voice, especially in our hunting space. That's the legacy of how we've had the opportunities we have, is individual people getting together, starting groups, starting efforts to do all the things that we're blessed with today. So I can't see your genetic code through this screen, but I have a feeling that there's some DNA strain that we as hunters get at birth or something. I don't know, but I sure appreciate you guys doing it. Kind of lay out a little bit, whoever wants to take it, about what people can see here as you're rolling this out now. You're kind of raising some awareness. I think the other day I saw one of your position statements on something. Uh, Give folks an idea of where the North American Pronghorn Foundation's gonna, uh, I guess you could say, make its footprint out there.
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in here and guys, fill in as we need to. But I think the first thing, and Dean hinted at it. The first thing we have to do is be functional. The first thing we've got to do is get the lights on and get get a website up and get a membership structure and all that sort of stuff. So we were fortunate to be able to publicly release the website and start adding members and selling merchandise here about 2.5 weeks ago. And you can come visit us, take a look at what we're doing on www.pronghorns with an S, pronghorns.org. Or if you're on Instagram, my kids tell me that's not the new hip one, but it's where we're at for right now.
I think that's
But
where our demographic is, maybe not our kids.
yeah, and that's going to be NAPF, so North American Pronghorn Foundation, NAPF_official at Instagram. It's the best way to keep in touch with what we're doing right now. Get on over there, join. We have an annual membership structure and a sponsor membership structure. We'll be rolling out life memberships here shortly. But in terms of what we're out there to do, it's not sell T-shirts or start websites. What we're really out there to do is advocate for pronghorn in their landscapes. And I think Randy, you hinted at it, but we've put a couple comments out there on the ground related to horse removal. So I'm sitting here right now in Nevada, and one of those comments was regarding a wild horse and burrow management area here in Nevada that's been well over objective. And particularly on the dryland parts of the Pronghorn Range, that horse and burrow issue's been a big one, and so we wanted to get involved immediately on that one. Same thing with the Wyoming comment there, in the southwest corner of the state. Some other things that we're looking at getting involved in, part of and I'm sure we'll get to mission here shortly, but one of the things that we're very strongly advocating for is really starting to understand the things that affect pronghorn populations besides bad winters and encroachment. And so we're looking to get some money on the ground immediately, particularly in regard to developing scientific knowledge about what it is that really makes a difference for pronghorn on the landscape. And so we're out there looking actively for funding projects that are going to build that wealth of knowledge and crack open another chapter of the book.
Well, Eric, you touch on something that I'm sorry I skipped over. Who wants to just state what the mission? I mean, when you have a nonprofit org, you have to say our mission is, whoop, so that it's hopefully less than a 30-second elevator pitch. So I feel stupid. I forgot to even ask. Who wants to recite the mission of North American Pronghorn Foundation?
You
Yeah,
got it up there, Eric?
yeah, I got you guys. The North American Pronghorn Foundation enhances pronghorn populations and habitats through advocacy, stewardship, stakeholder partnership, and our hunting heritage. That's the top of the stationery. But what I'll tell you is that you can pretty much summarize that by saying we're here to future proof pronghorn. The bottom line is
Future
that
proof. That's a new word.
I made it up.
Oh, did you? All right. When I look in the dictionary, I'll see Eric's name next to that.
Hopefully, no picture.
So,
Um,
how do you quote unquote future proof pronghorn? That's
I
what
think
someone's
that
going to ask.
Yeah, the easy way to talk about it is that 200 years ago we got pronghorn on the landscape, not thinking at all about badly sited solar development and barbed wire, right? We don't know what the next 200 years is going to hold for that species, but in order to keep their multi-million year legacy on the landscape, we got to start thinking about how we can build robust and sustainable populations and habitats. And it's both. It's not just having the critter; it's having the space for the critter. So we're looking forward to working with all the partners that are on the ground now. Right, you can't have long lasting conservation and population without working with the people and other equities that are on the landscape. So we're looking to really build resilient partnerships with ranchers, the oil and gas industry, the state wildlife agencies, to make sure that we can take care of this critter for the long term. So.
I like that idea. I'm all on board with that because in 2004, the Wildlife Management Institute published this book. I call it my Pronghorn Bible. Each of you might have seen this or might have it, but look how thick that thing is. This thing is, if you took that home as a homework assignment, it'd take you all of 8th, 9th, and 10th grade. And, but it's a little bit dated because it's 2004 and so many other pressures have come to our landscape as society demands more resources, more energy, more everything. But there's a lot of fundamental, basic, and complicated information in this book of the study that has been done on pronghorn about habitat, obviously, about migration, about how their evolution of, they didn't grow up, quote unquote, evolve with fences. So an animal whose mechanism for detecting predation is amazing eyesight and then escaping predation is amazing speed, you kind of shortcut that when all of a sudden you got fences everywhere for a species that isn't going to leap a fence as readily as a mule deer.
Yeah. I mean, I think, to your point, pronghorn, quite a bit of history. Yes, the book's 21 years old, but pronghorn's needs haven't changed in 21 years. We've changed. What we've done has changed. The landscape has changed, but pronghorn's needs haven't changed. So the most important interaction we have, and people aren't going anywhere. Development's not going anywhere. Energy needs aren't going anywhere. So, us as an advocacy and conservation organization, it's really about finding solutions through fencing, through energy development, through all these efforts to be a partner to make sure that those projects, can proceed, but also support the population at the same time. So, and I said advocacy organization. We're really a conservation org. Really at the end of the day, but that's, I think, really the story of how we can interact and support and future-proof pronghorn. It's not just making the pronghorn evolve around us. It's ways we can live together and support the landscape so that the pronghorn can grow, survive, and then people will continue to develop, and smart development and things like that will make it happen.
Yeah.
We've mentioned fencing a number of times here, and we maybe should elaborate on that just a little bit. But pronghorn don't like to jump fence. I mean, that's kind of one of their unique traits. They'll go under it if they can. They don't like to jump them. They can, and I have a quick little story that illustrates this point really well. So the first time I'm out pronghorn hunting, I'm with my 12-year-old girl, and she's asking me about, Dad, tell me about pronghorn, this and that. And somehow we come to fence, and I say they don't like to jump fence. And well, she grew up in whitetail country. They jump fences like crazy, and I could just see it didn't really make sense to her. And we drive down the road about a mile or two, and here comes a little pronghorn buck running towards the road. And there's a fence on each side of the road. And I'm like, oh, this is going to illustrate my point just perfect. The pronghorn runs up to the fence, jumps over the fence like it's not even there, through the ditch, over the road, into the next ditch, jumps over that ditch, and away it goes. And she turns and looks at me, and I'm like,
Oh man. Well, Dean, you can tell your daughter that I've been chasing pronghorn for 35 years, and one time in Wyoming did I see a pronghorn jump a fence. And it's quite remarkable. I told the camera guy, oh, we could see the pronghorn running up and down a fence line. I'm like, film that. Let's see where he goes across or goes underneath the fence, because he's never going to jump it. We actually have footage of that buck jumping the fence about 30 seconds after I said, oh, he'll never jump that fence. So make sure and get the footage of where he crawls under. So I know what you're talking about there.
and
We, if we could only use that as our breed stock for future pronghorn, maybe we'd resolve the whole fence row issue.
yeah, don't shoot that one.
Well,
But it really creates a problem from a migration perspective
right.
too. And they hit that barrier and they can't go where they want to go.
Yeah.
And that really is a unique problem that really only faces pronghorn.
Yeah. And I think, back, Phil, to your point of how we've changed in 21 years, but pronghorn haven't. That is one of the things that we have learned about pronghorn that has been going on for eternity, ever since the 12 pronghorn species disappeared and we came out of the Pleistocene with our current species, is their need for migration and what they need for summer range, for lactation, for where that forage is going to be, for those does to get those young fawns through the summer, grow them healthy, and then go somewhere where, I mean, some of these migrations are 100 miles, some might only be 20 miles, but they evolved as a migratory species that moves across the landscape to satisfy whatever need they have at the place on that landscape that can satisfy that need at the lowest risk at that time of year.
Yep.
And that means being really mobile. And highways and cities and dams and reservoirs and fences create really create a lot of problem with that. And that's I hope people, I'm trying to paint this so people understand that these aren't like the whitetail that lives in your 60-acre farm plot, wherever you might live, or maybe even elk are way more adaptable, are as migratory, but they're way more adaptable than pronghorn. Pronghorn are just I'm going to say fragile. I don't know if that's the right term, but their needs are not addressed well in how human activity has for a long time and is continuing to place a lot of obstructions on their landscape.
Yeah, they've definitely got a tighter habitat that they're looking for, right? They're not, you talk about elk, and elk will live from the tree line and the alpine all the way down into farmers fields, right? And pronghorn aren't looking for that. They're looking for a pretty, they're not an obligate exactly, but they're looking for a pretty specific piece of landscape. And to your point about migration, I think I didn't realize this as a pronghorn fan until I started getting serious about the biology. But the longest migration in the lower 48, longest land migration in the lower 48 is pronghorn antelope, sorry, is pronghorn. And I think it's important to recognize that and understand that while they don't all migrate, certain populations absolutely require that. And we're talk about Wyoming as the heart of pronghorn. The sublet herd, which is for scale, it's about 20 between 10 and 20% of the population of pronghorn in Wyoming, and about the same number of pronghorn that Nevada has. That herd requires migration, and so one of the things that we've gotten into as an organization in the first month is advocating for the recognition of the sublet migration corridor in Southwest Wyoming. Just to call attention to the fact that you got a huge population of these critters that absolutely have to go from high country to low country to make their living. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean some of the migrations that are really incredibly short, as we look at these epic long migrations, but there's very small regional movements that happen with pronghorn that really affect fawn survival and things. That just a small marginal change in habitat, the way they hide fawns, if they can't cross a fence into an area that's better for hiding their fawns and they end up exposed, we just end up with a much lower fawn rate and a hard winter on top of that. And it
Yeah.
can hammer herds. I mean, we've seen it in the last few years with some of the challenging winters. And what we're seeing, at least on some small herds and some studies we're seeing, is transplanting just doesn't work if they don't have the habitat to reproduce. You get a nice transplanted herd, they survive, they thrive, but they don't reproduce easily. And so that's a huge component of that habitat movement, is where they move from their feed grounds to the reproductive area.
That point about some people just think, well, let's go relocate some there. Now, that migratory behaviors across all species, they've studied it in sheep, they've studied it in elk, mule deer. It's not something that is inherent in their mind if they haven't learned it from their mother.
Yep.
Every species, this migration, not just the path of how to get back and forth, but how to capitalize on the resources you need along that migratory path, comes from a learned behavior of its mother. And so to think that you're just going to bring a whole new herd in and say, well, those ones died, but we'll bring some more. That so far it's shown that something like that is not going to work. So that just everything that we'll talk about, I'm sure, points to the critical need of habitat.
And I mean, I don't want to knock transplanting. RMEF has done an amazing job in building populations that way, but it's certainly expensive and it takes a long time. And natural expansion is certainly more robust and more economically viable, as I'm sure some of those members can point out.
Randy, to your point of learned behavior, isn't nature amazing? I mean, when you think about this, you think about that fawn who's jumping around, playing around, not a care in the world, right? Trying to nurse one more time when mom won't let it, looking at a butterfly, but it's learning, somehow it learns the migration route.
Yeah. And it's amazing what they learn, just that what's necessary for them to prosper and grow to that next generation. And pronghorn are so selective, and I think, Eric, you were talking about this, how they have a narrow band, maybe sometimes not elevation wise, but just habitat wise. Pronghorn absolutely need to have forbs on the landscape in the springtime during lactation. There's nothing that's a greater combination of nutrition and everything else that they need for that critical period. So if you have a landscape that all of a sudden, pesticides get sprayed for whatever, oh, we got to get rid of all this, and you end up with a monoculture, that no longer is going to be robust pronghorn habitat. If you have fire come through, if it's too hot of a fire and it torches everything, a lot of those forbs are not going to be there. They're going to get replaced by sometimes invasive plants like cheatgrass and other. So these needs of what they want and what they have to have is pretty narrow, because they're not a species that survives real well on grasses like elk. Elk are so adaptable. Grasses, browse, forbs, shrubs, we'll make it work. Pronghorn need to go from forbs to browse and have another. They'll use one type of browse in the late summer and fall, and then they need usually a different type of browse to get them through the winter when the snows come or when the landscape dries out more. And it's not every piece of habitat in the Rocky Mountain West has those attributes.
Yeah.
And so enhancing that, protecting that, and conserving that really is at the core of the future of pronghorn in
Yeah, it
my
brings
mind.
up another great point too, Randy, that like, it's not the same threat everywhere,
Right.
I mean, you
Yes.
might you might look at a fractured corridor in southwest Wyoming, for example. We put a solar site in a bad place, and now all of a sudden that migration corridor is broken. You might go to a place like Washington where pronghorn are struggling to to stay established on the landscape. In fact, about the only place they are is on a reservation, right? You might think that ag is the big, that monoculture ag is the big thing that's destroyed that habitat or made it unpalatable for pronghorn. But that's totally different than Nevada, where you're talking about limited water resources and competition from horses and burros, right? So one of the things that we're really looking to do is categorize the big threats and the big things that we can, put some boots on the ground or put some money on the ground to fix in every state, and they're different. So we're building state portfolios out so that we can categorize across the range what we really need to get after to put more tags on the landscape. As a selfish hunter, I want more opportunities to hunt pronghorn in different places. So
I'm as selfish as anybody when it comes to pronghorn, Eric. I want lots of pronghorn everywhere, because if there's lots in my home state of Montana as a resident, I got almost 100% chance of drawing. But if there are more pronghorn in Wyoming and Nevada and Idaho and Colorado and Arizona and New Mexico, my odds of drawing as a non-resident, I don't care which percentage those states apply to non-residents, 5%, 6%, 10%, 20%. 10% of a bigger pie is a bigger slice of that pie for us
yeah.
non-residents. So, you get this kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, comment of, well, they get 90% of it. I'm not that interested in spending my time or money. Well, if the herd grows by 20%, your 10% also grows by a proportionate 20%. So
Yeah, the never-ending resident non-resident battle during
yeah,
the current moment of application season, really tamps down quite a bit when your population grows and there's more
mhm,
tags available
yep,
and more hunting opportunity. As the resource continues to shrink, as habitat shrinks and everything, then we start to kind of eat our own a
yeah,
little bit. So
Yeah.
certainly the goal of growing habitat and growing populations of pronghorn and all the species associated with the pronghorn. I mean, the great thing about pronghorn habitat is it's great mule deer habitat, it's great sage grouse habitat. So by all of us working as partners with our orgs, it certainly helps grow opportunity for all of us.
yeah.
Yeah, something else that occurs to me too is that like the one of the things that has really added a lot of value to my grown up life and to my hunting life is the ability to hunt in different places and different states and different landscapes.
Mhm.
I'll never forget, like, the thing that got me hooked on the sagebrush sea and habitat was and pronghorn really was going to my first pronghorn hunt in Wyoming. And I'd never been on that landscape, boots on that landscape. I'd driven across it on 80 and I'd driven across it on 90, but I thought I had a pretty good sense of what it was about. And my buddy and I we were driving down a Wyoming country road. It was county road, and nice big crowned road with 6 or 8 foot ditches on either side. And we came across a little gully and kicked up a small band of pronghorn, and those pronghorn paralleled us on that road for, well, I don't know, half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, and were keeping up with us 45 miles an hour, just like you could have set a glass on their back, which was amazing enough. But then they decided they wanted to cross the road, so they pulled ahead of us. We're 45 miles an hour down that country road. They pulled ahead of us by about 50, 80 yards, decided to go right down that 6 to 8 foot ditch, up across that crown road, down over the other 6 or 8 foot ditch, and off into gone. And it took them not even a second thought, and you could have kept that glass of water right on their back the whole way across. And man, between that and the first time I put my boots on the ground and really got into those little folds and little pockets in that landscape that you can't see if you're just looking at it, man, I was hooked. And that's the beauty to me of non-resident hunting, is that you get to go see something really cool in a really cool place and get to know a landscape in a way that you wouldn't any other way. So I mean, that stuff is what it's all about. So
I totally agree, Eric. And a lot of times you drive through that part of the country, and like my wife is like, this is really boring, you know. And of course, I'm looking at it a little differently. But then when you actually put boots on the ground and you're walking in that, and that sunset comes, and my boys just fell in love with that country. They're like, Dad, this is so awesome. And the people roaring by on the freeway, they're like, how far to the next Starbucks is
Yeah, I'm addicted to it. I live here in the mountains, and it's kind of funny in hunting season. A lot of people are coming to the mountains to hunt elk or there, and a lot of times I find myself going the other way. I being out there on that prairie in September and October is just, for me, it's enchanting. It's captivating. It's usually lonelier than it is in the mountains. Uh, and you just get to see something so spectacular. Even if someone isn't a hunter, they should go watch pronghorn rutting behavior in September. It is a spectacle that uh, I can't even imagine how cool it would have been 300 years ago to sit there and watch 20 million pronghorn out on the prairie running around the way they do, bucks fighting with each other, does kind of teasing them and flaunting them and running off. And I don't know how they survive the rut, quite honestly. Those bucks, as much running as they do, they got to put on more miles in September than they do the whole rest of the year.
It's
Yeah.
nothing more entertaining than watching a buck try and herd does, and you just have a few of those stubborn does that just do not want to stay in there. And gosh, the patience of trying to corral her back in is I'm very sympathetic.
trying to hold water in your hands.
And that's what's unique about pronghorners. They're so visible. You
Yeah.
can actually go witness that. I mean, go try and watch the elk rut. Well, outside of Rocky Mountain National Park, we're fortunate if we can see that, right? And we put a lot of time and effort to see that. But pronghorn, you can see that pretty readily.
Yeah, and it gets to their needs of the landscape and the landscape needing to provide what is basic for them in the rut. The biggest need that those bucks have is water, and if through fencing or other things, or just human, uh, I guess I'll call it use slash theft of surface water. We're really good at redirecting surface water for our own human needs. And you get to places like Nevada, Southeast Oregon, Utah, parts of northern Arizona. As human development has come along, the surface water has changed dramatically from what it was 100 years ago as far as availability. Well, you get a species that depends on surface water, and all of a sudden we as humans take it for our own use. We got to figure out ways to keep that on the landscape. And I know some people say, "Oh, that's not a problem where I live." Well, maybe it's not, but a lot of pronghorn country is dry. It's some of the most arid country out there, and just basic things that we take for granted, like water and access to that water, in so many ways can be hampered to the detriment of pronghorn.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Dean. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that's something, so I live in Minnesota, right? Well, we got water everywhere, right? And out east, I think there's a lot of, further east, there's a lot of water. And so the people that love to come out and hunt pronghorn don't understand that. Their little week-long trip, it really probably just doesn't sink in. And through them hot days of August when the pronghorn really need it.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I think we talk about human use on the landscape. Certainly, there's some great and helpful cattle drinkers out there that have helped pronghorn many a time. So it's a double-edged sword at moments. But I think one thing that's really missed, at least in my area, in some of these western populations, Nevada, Utah, um, is how much the conversion to invasive species can really suck water out of the landscape. There's
Yeah.
some of these plant species that are coming in. You think, yeah, well, look at it, it's a thriving landscape. There's plants everywhere. There's growth. Yeah, but some of those invasives are super water hungry. And it's not human development. It's not cattle ranching. It's that juniper encroachment is just vacuuming water out of the landscape, and that it's hard to see as somebody who's not active and aware of what's happening. They just see a healthy landscape, not realizing that what's there is actually what's destroying the population.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Phil. Eric, you're right now in Nevada. Uh, I went to college there and spent a lot of time there. And I go back to these places now that in the 1980s, I'm out there coyote hunting or deer hunting, and the level of encroachment from conifers, pinyon juniper,
Mm.
is unbelievable. Well, last year I was down there and was there with Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnerships and partnership and their local Nevada person, and he went and showed me how they're trying to restore water back on surface water that was historically there in the landscape. So they've got some grants put together, and they go and they cut about 100-yard band off each side of what used to be a stream, and they call it cut and stack or something like that. So you see all these stacks of pinyon juniper there.
Huh.
And so we went to one that has only been in place for 2 years, and it used to be just a dry stream bed because of all that. We were there in November and there was water flowing.
Jeez.
And
Yeah.
the forage that was there in that, well, I guess it'd be a 200-yard wide band, was unbelievable. The deer tracks in there, it was like, man, the deer found this in a quick hurry.
Yeah.
But I was talking to him, he's like, I wish this was something we could do everywhere, but it's really expensive to do this. And so I think people don't realize how sometimes that we equate that what we've done on the landscape creates a problem. Sometimes it's what we don't do. And in this case, it's we don't let fire in its natural cycle occur. And all of a sudden we end up with pinyon juniper. Pinyon juniper, and as you mentioned, that's one of the most thirsty plants on the
Yep.
landscape. You all of a sudden take former wet stream beds or riparian areas, and you let that encroach, pretty soon you end up with a dry, rocky, dusty
Yeah, and there's no undergrowth because there's no
nothing.
there's no soil. The plants get
Yep.
mature, they get big, they choke everything out, and there's no forage there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've mentioned a couple times throughout, and I feel like I got to loop back to it. Like we've talked about fences a lot, and fence here, fence there, and to your point that it's sometimes it's what we don't do versus what we do. I don't want anyone to get the idea that we're for tearing up every fence on the planet. We're not. I think there's some very simple things we can do, like that cut and stack you were talking about. Like, hey, maybe we just raise that bottom wire. Maybe we don't barb that bottom wire.
Yeah.
Maybe we take that fence that we haven't used in 30 years out. Those kind of things. And another point that is really important is that it's not everywhere. It's in very specific spots. We can develop research to pin down where it is that we need to make those changes. You talked about a 200-yard belt of green, and sometimes that's all it takes to keep a herd on the landscape. And so, we're really looking to work with people who are on the landscape, including ranchers, including the energy industry, to figure out where those spots are and really make a difference right there. So,
Yeah. I think one thing that the audience is probably quickly realizing is there are a lot of different issues and a lot of different factors impacting pronghorn, no matter where they live. But it pretty much all comes back to their habitat, making that habitat productive and to whatever degree we can, not have it be disrupted or mitigate how it's disrupted by human activity. It's you guys are gonna have no shortage of things to to be working on.
Well,
I
that's the challenge in this phase we're in right now, as we're just kicking off. Is what do we capture as our first project? There's the big sexy projects, collar studies, things of that sort that seem kind of catch everybody's interest, but they're very expensive and they take years.
yeah.
And our partners and our supporters, they also like to see what we're doing and saying, well, we're going to fund this study, and in 5 years we'll have something exciting to talk about. We want to be partners for those projects as well, but there's also a lot of early ground level projects like third wire replacement, smooth row wires, maybe some juniper conversion, not cheap, but more ground level. So it's finding that portfolio of projects, and like you said, there's a lot of them, and it's people want to say, what are we doing first, or what's happening, what's the next step, and really, as Eric pointed to, we're developing that portfolio of states and actively reaching out to the biologists in those states and the partners in those states and trying to figure out what the needs are for their habitat region and really where the dollars are best spent. We're a young, small organization, and we don't have six-figure checks to write all over the place. It's going to be a combination of financial support from our members and sweat equity from our members and our board members and supporters out there in the field, in these early days. And hopefully we'll build up our war chest over the next few years as well, and be able to take on some of those really large projects, but also partnerships with RMEF and Mule Deer Foundation and all the other partners out there. Hopefully we can chip in as a component. I know Dean's very involved in Pheasants Forever, and there's certainly some crossover in pheasant habitat and pronghorn habitat in some places. So there's a lot of ways that we can all, as conservation orgs, have a place on the landscape.
Yeah. Do you guys think you'll have a project like get your hands dirty, put your boots on the ground kind of project in the next year?
Oh yeah, for
Really?
sure.
Yeah, I think we're going to be. I think you're going to see one before the end of
Before
the
that,
summer.
yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's going to be quick. I mean, I don't think we're, again, to Phil's point, I don't think we're fixing hundreds of thousands of acres, but
Mhm.
I mean, you're going to see some boots on the ground projects coming up here shortly, and even just partnering with Mule Deer Foundation to do a fence removal, that
Right.
sort of stuff you're going to see on the landscape.
Wow.
We've been sort of vetting the next level, what I would say the next step up in terms of complexity, project wise, and maybe it's partially funding a collar study or, working on a migration corridor, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we're still trying to figure out what the right step is to show to show good faith and to show that we're focused on the resource
Yeah.
for our members, but also to keep ourselves afloat, right? You can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
And while we'd love to put $6 million into a collar study this year, it's we're like, hey, do we have enough money to order another set of hats? You know what I mean? So,
Well, I hope when you have whatever project that is, that it's within a day's drive of me and it's during a period when I'm not obligated to something else, because I would grab as many of my crew as I could coerce, and I'd remind them, hey guys, I pay you for a week of volunteer work every year, so this is the days that we're going to do it.
yeah,
I hope it's somewhere in our neighborhood so we could go help, where that's Wyoming, Montana, Idaho.
there's a lot of pronghorn within a day's drive of you, Randy. So I think we can.
There definitely is that, and for us, we've done a bunch of these fence poles. The Southwest Montana, there's an area called the Horse Prairie where they've really done in Montana, where we've done most of our pronghorn research on migrations for pronghorn has been in Southwest Montana, and they've identified this Horse Prairie area. They have all these collars, and you see it's the pronghorn are kind of moving in a straight line, and they hit something, and then they go perpendicular to where that straight line was, and you see them doing this, and there's so many marks that are along the way, and you ask the biologist, well, was this like in a 15-minute path that they were going back and forth? They're like, no, a lot of
Days.
these marks you see are days that they were stranded there, that they were
Yeah.
stuck there. And then all of a sudden you either see them go back to where they came, or they make some great big out of the way loop, and then they continue back to how they were going. But that kind of disruption is significant, exposes them to more predation, deprives them of the necessary resources they have. Some of the adults can handle it better than the fawns can. And so we've been over there, I think, on 3 of them. And one of you mentioned earlier, sometimes it's not removal of the fence. What we did on that one is we pulled the bottom strand off, and the landowner who is adjacent to that is like, hey, if you guys want to
Yeah.
re-fence
You want to restring my fence? Sure.
yeah, knock yourself out. And so we did. Over the course of that summer, uh, folks came out from Minnesota. They came out from all over the place to help over the course of that summer. I can't remember how many miles it is, but the bottom strand on that fence now is smooth wire. And they moved
Yep.
it up. I'm trying to remember. They measured what they
It's only
wanted.
6 inches or something like
Yeah,
that. It's pretty
yeah,
minor.
yeah, it's a pretty minor inconvenience, and, some of it was even that we pulled out. We did replace some full stretches where the bottom 30 inches was this woven, we call it sheep fence out here. I don't
Yep.
know what it is, but it's
Yep.
like,
Yep.
Yep.
6-inch,
Hey,
8-inch squares where
Panels. Yeah.
rats can't hardly get through that, let
Yeah.
alone a pronghorn. And so we pulled out, I shouldn't say we, well, yeah, the group that worked on it, we pulled out a lot of that and replaced it with two other strands. The middle strand was barbed, but the bottom strand was smooth. And it'll be cool to just see how that benefits one of our most robust herds in southwest Montana. The data
yeah,
on that.
Colorado has a great document called Wildlife Friendly Fencing. And, they're really a proponent. I mean, fencing is not necessarily the enemy. I mean, ranching is going to happen. And
Mhm.
ranchers and farmers are some of our greatest partners in conservation.
Yep.
They get it. They want the landscape. They don't want condos. They,
Yeah.
they need affordable land to graze their animals and to farm. And it's really just partnering with your farmers and ranchers to make these minor adjustments or changes that make it all fit. And yeah, that is one very reasonable ask, and something that financially can be supported and spread. And like Eric said, it doesn't have to be ubiquitous to all fences. It just needs to be a few miles here and a few miles there in those corridors, and it can really make an impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, knowledge is power, right? And the reality is, the more we can figure out, this gets quoted a lot, but pronghorn, we get the question a lot of times, like, why pronghorn? They share so much, they share so much habitat with mule deer, like, aren't we doing enough? And the reality is, there's a ton about pronghorn we don't understand.
Yeah.
Their closest living relative is a giraffe.
Yeah,
Like,
giraffe.
you gotta be kidding me. Like, what may be good for mule deer might not in all cases, in all places, be good for pronghorn, and we got to figure that stuff out. The more we know, the more we can target what it is that we're going after. And I'll tell you, the other thing that is really important is just spreading the knowledge that, for example, something as simple as pronghorn are pretty good to eat. They taste pretty good.
Yeah.
Guys, this isn't a throwaway animal. This is something that not only adds value to the landscape, it adds value to your freezer, for crying out loud. And
If
We
only
might
they were
do
the
just
that.
size of a giraffe.
no,
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
yeah.
We've done taste tests against, mule deer, elk, beef, whitetail, and in my house, pronghorn comes out right at the top. And I think one of the reason they can get a bad name for table fare is that, typically when you're hunting them, it's hot,
Yeah.
right? And so if you don't get that meat cooled down, the other thing is their hair comes out so easy. The
Yeah.
first time I got one, I grabbed the hair on the back like I would a whitetail to roll it over, and I ended up with two
Handfuls of-
fistfuls of hair. And so I think that hair gets in the meat real easy if you're not super careful.
Yeah.
And then some people parade it around in the back of their truck. And if you treated beef like that, you wouldn't eat beef either.
Right.
So
Uh,
it really is great table
yeah,
fare.
we might edit out this segment about how good eating they are, because if everyone finds that out, it's just going to be that much harder for us to draw tags. But no, I've cycled. I'm sure it's at least 60 pronghorn through my freezer between me and my son. And in Montana, we used to be, if you drew a buck tag, they'd let you buy 3 doe tags. Not that I ever shot 3 does in here, but maybe I've just been lucky. I have never had one pronghorn from all the places I've hunted them that was anything other than excellent.
Yeah.
I not even never had any of them get to the point of marginal. They have all been excellent. And my biggest regret, I mean, I'm really happy how small they are when I got to pack out a
Yeah.
limit of pronghorn compared to a limit of elk. But then when I get them in the freezer, I'm complaining that didn't even take me a month to plow through that thing.
Yeah, they go quick. They go
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
It's
So
like
Yeah.
like a teal breast, right? They taste really good,
Yeah.
but man, could they be bigger?
I
that's a
I
good
had such an
analogy
Yeah.
I had such an opportunity last fall, Randy. I'm at your house. You're like, "Hey, do you need any, meat or anything?"
Yeah.
And if I would have known you had pronghorn, I just
Well, a dirty little secret, Eric, is that you came out in September after I just got back from helping my son with an Oregon pronghorn hunt.
Oh,
yeah.
that
And I
yeah,
did
yeah.
have a little bit there, but you know, we're friends.
There's a
But
limit.
there's, yeah, kind of like my wife when we have company. My wife loves walleye fishing, and I'm like, should we cook some walleyes for him? No.
Nope.
What? Let's take him out for dinner.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, people ask me, boy, you got quite a bit of elk in your freezer. What's that there for? Trading with pronghorn. I would trade 2 or 3 pounds of elk for a pound of pronghorn. That's a standing invitation to anyone listening. I
No,
so
not taking you up on that.
yeah, but I think there's so many unique things about pronghorn. I hope people say, well, why would you want to bring all this attention and all this light to pronghorn? It's kind of this secret that some of us are junkies and we kind of want to keep it to ourselves. Well, pronghorn need a bigger voice. If we want pronghorn to be more abundant and have a brighter future, what was the term you guys used? If we want a future-proof pronghorn, uh, it needs more voice. It needs more funding. It needs more advocates. And if that means I got to share, you know, my hunting opportunity so that some other people get it, when maybe I don't, I'm on board with that. The future
Yeah,
of
well,
pronghorn is way more important to me than me getting my next pronghorn tag.
Yeah.
I mean, Dean, Eric, and I all have young kids. Dean's are a little bit older. Eric's are a little bit younger, and we all want to take our kids hunting, and we don't want to be telling back in the day stories to our kids about how. I mean, and you hear it now. Yeah, you should be able to get doe tags over the counter and da 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 da. I don't want to tell my kid how pronghorn used to be. We
Uh,
want to grow those populations and we want to take them on those hunts and go on those hunts with them and have them drag my old butt up the hill, later down the road. It's so hiding the situation. I mean, pronghorn are not doing well.
right.
As much as we're having fun, and as much as they're a unique animal because they're visible on the landscape. So you're driving down 80 across the country and you see them, unlike elk sometimes. So you think, gosh, well, there's pronghorn everywhere. Well, yeah, because they're out in the alfalfa fields and they're out. But the reality is they're not doing well in most populations, and they need support, or it will be a back in my day story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll risk being the old gray-haired fart who sounds like grandpa back in the day. Uh, but when I first started hunting pronghorn in Wyoming in the late 1990s, there were almost 700,000 pronghorn on that landscape. Now there's maybe 300,000. My home state of Montana in the early 2000s had 150 to 180,000 pronghorn on the landscape, depending on how severe the winter or how good the moisture was for the fawn crop. Now we're under 100,000.
Yeah.
And so that story repeats itself in a lot of states. And
Mhm.
I,
Yep.
I I want to see that if I'm sitting on my porch in my rocking chair drinking my last cup of coffee, someone say, "Can you believe how many pronghorn we got these days? It's like
Yeah.
they're like a nuisance out there."
I'd point out to you too that whitetail deer. Let's talk about whitetail deer. 1930, you've got less than 100,000, right?
Yep.
On the landscape period across the country, and now, you're talking what, I don't know, 40, 50 million. I mean, tens of millions of whitetail deer on the landscape, and
Yep.
is that because they're not popular and nobody hunts them? I mean, come on,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
It goes back to the, I hate to, I'm going to paraphrase this, and please bear with me, but in Sand County Almanac, Aldo Leopold talks about you got to improve the well. You can't just improve the pump, you got to improve the well.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about here. The things we keep are the things we love, and we choose to have animals on the landscape now. I mean, if we didn't make a conscious effort to put something on the landscape and keep it there, it wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And that story goes over and over again. Turkey, white-tailed deer, and the reality is this organization exists because we're going to choose pronghorn, and we're going to make sure that people choose pronghorn and love them,
Yeah.
and that they have a healthy future, and that's the bottom line. So.
Well, I'm 100% on board with it. You guys, when it comes to raising money for this outfit, you just tell me, because I'm shameless when it comes to trying to empty people's pockets for the cause of conservation. I think that's why I get asked to be an MC to so many events. Is if I know that person has $20 in their pocket, my job is to make sure they leave that there that night. Or if their stock portfolio is doing pretty well, I need to convince them that they need to donate some appreciated securities to the cause of conservation. I,
Yeah.
I don't blush. I'm not hesitant. I've learned that you got to approach it the right way. You can't be a jerk and act like you're robbing them, but there's a fine line between guilting them into it and appealing to their passion for hunting. So, when you guys get to that fundraising part, I've already got my list of I guess you call them targets. I hate to call them that because that
Yeah.
sounds like a pretty aggressive word, but I have my milk route of people that I'm going to go and say, all right, fellers, I took you on a pronghorn hunt. It's time to get out your checkbook here. I'm going to teach
Yeah.
you how to write a check.
Yeah.
And I know that we need all types of advocacy and all types of talent and skills brought to organizations. I always say every hunter can give some of their time or their talent or their treasure, the three T's, I call it. And none of us really have all three of it. I've yet to encounter anyone who has a ton of treasure and a lot of time, or, you know, uh, everyone has talent. I don't care. That's the one that everybody can apply some talent to the cause of conservation in some way, whether it is a fence pole, maybe it's they're good at email or putting together email blasts. There's no shortage of things that require talent. Time is a scarce resource. So when people give their time, I'm so thankful because I know how rare and how scarce our time is these days. And, conservation is not cheap. And anyone who thinks it's expensive today, just give it 10 years and you'll see how expensive
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
And
Well, you're being very polite, Randy, but as a conservation org, begging for money is kind of number one.
yeah, I'm here to beg on your behalf. Don't even, like I'm trying to talk. Right behind me here. The reason that I don't know if you guys have seen this. This is a pronghorn that's been painted by Allie Ray.
Very
Uh,
cool.
and I'm trying to convince her that we should do a fundraiser for the Pronghorn Foundation.
Oh,
Oof.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
shot the pronghorn in Nevada. Uh, I ate the pronghorn.
It doesn't come with a box of
Share.
meat.
No, it does not
Gosh.
come with a box of meat. But Allie paints these really amazing things, and she's always excited to help conservation groups. So I'm willing, if Allie's willing, I'm willing to donate the pronghorn I shot to her and her artwork to some way, shape, or form of
Wow.
raising money for the cause of pronghorn. And
Well,
I don't care what it is, raffles. If you need me to call some of my partners in the industry and say, hey, I get an allotment of stuff. I'm going to allocate some to this. If you need me to get out on my platforms, you guys are all members out on our Hunt Talk forum. If you need me to get out there and say, hey, if you aren't donating or aren't a member of the North American Pronghorn Foundation, I might throw you off here. You just tell me. As my grandma used to say, if someone's upset over that, they've mistaken me for someone who's concerned about their hurt feelings.
Yeah.
You don't run a quality nonprofit conservation advocacy group with bake sales.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I know all of you are so focused on so many other things that I think people like me with platforms and the passion for it, it's our job to go there and help shake the trees and get the money. So,
Well, I mean, I certainly appreciate it, Randy, and I got to tell you too. I have to throw some of that back to you. I think This organization wouldn't be on the ground right now were it not for the support of a lot of those Hunt Talk members who,
Yeah.
went to the go, went and provided that early seed money that got our feet moving. So,
Yeah.
thank you back to that community and thank you to you, for what you've done already. And I'm sure we'll continue to work together to make this thing happen. So.
Oh yeah. If you guys don't rely on me, I'm gonna feel like I must have offended you or something. You guys are like, oh, that Newberg guy, he's a boat anchor. He's an albatross, man. Let's run away from him. But I, I think if there's one thing that I have always felt is that leading by example is one of the most effective ways. You can't lead from the back of the of the parade. Uh, and I've been blessed in my entire life for all the way my life has turned out has been such a blessing. Pronghorn and hunting and conservation have become so much a part of that if I can't use my platforms to help you guys in some way, shape, or form, then get me the hell out of here and find someone who can, because I'm just taking up space if I can't be an advocate for what you guys are doing. So whatever my platforms can help, I don't care if it's Hunt Talk, the podcast, our YouTube videos, just say so. And we're
Well,
on,
Well,
we're there.
I think it's so important to reach a large audience, and that's where, as a fledgling organization, we don't have an email list with a gazillion names on there, and how you raise the money that we want to raise, the kind of money we want to raise, you got to have an army out there. You got to
Yep.
have a lot of people donating a little, or you got to have just a few people donating a lot. Well, we don't have those few people donating a lot, so we're left with a lot of people is
Yeah.
what we need to reach.
Yeah.
and I have
And
to
I think
say, our conservation partners out there, as we've started, some of the other conservation orgs have stepped up, and it's been fun to watch and really really humbling as well. Unlike sometimes the private business model where we're all competing for somebody's dollars,
Yeah.
really our partners in conservation. At the end of the day, they care about conservation.
Yeah.
And if somebody else is out there beating the drum for conservation, even if it's not exactly in their niche, they're excited
Yeah.
because guess what? We all are part of multiple orgs. We're all boots on the ground somewhere else, and the rising tide raises all boats, as they say, and that's been a very humbling and great experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And
It-
I mean, to Dean's point too, I think that we're going to be stronger if we get a lot of small ones. If we get a lot of voices saying a little bit, we're going to be better, we're going to be stronger, and we're going to do a better job on the landscape. I mean, the bottom line is we need
yeah.
all those voices. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's so many things that make up a successful group, a successful org. Having that membership, or even if it's not a paid membership, but hey, I want to be on your mailer, your newsletter, and I will take action. That resonates out there. It builds the political and social capital that an organization needs beyond just funding. And so
Yep.
everybody can be a part of that in some way, shape, or form. To what you mentioned, Phil, I sat on the board of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation for 6 years. One of the parts of the mission of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation is it says elk and other wildlife. Well, when we would get projects to vote on, one of the scoring systems or points awarded was for how it helped other wildlife. And mule deer and pronghorn were always very high on that other wildlife scoring system. And so conservation in and of itself, no matter which group is doing it, usually helps other species. And that's why it's so easy, I think, for the conservation groups to form partnerships, friendships, alliances, strategic campaigns, because it's not like the fence is, well, this is right here, this boundary, this is where the pronghorn benefit ends and the mule deer benefit starts. It is not that way. And so
Yep.
I look at how many projects RMEF did when I was on that board that were in partnership with so many other groups. And by doing that, we could leverage more Pittman Robertson dollar, more agency dollars, more federal land dollars, and a lot more got done. Uh, so I'm sure you guys will be one of those critical and important partners that that gives voice to the pronghorn part of that bigger scope to conservation.
Yeah, we continue to need more partners in conservation. I think somebody said recently, the world of wildlife management is the snow globe's been shaken up a little bit in the last few months. So we'll, it's not a good or a bad thing, but it's a time to fight for what is important to us.
Yeah. Well, what else do you want to leave the audience with? I'm going to make the sales pitch. So you guys you tell the audience where they can go do all this stuff, because I'm just going to flat out tell them, if you guys don't become members of the North American Pronghorn Foundation, just quit listening. Quit watching, quit listening. Don't email me. Get to unsubscribe from our social media, unsubscribe from all of our newsletters. So
Yeah, a
there.
couple things I'll tell you. The website's the best place to do all of it. So pronghorns.org with an S there at the end of pronghorn. Go on over there. The join function is right towards the top. So come on over and click that join function. You'll see a couple options for you there to become a member, both at either the annual level or the sponsor level, and soon the life level if you're a lifelong advocate for pronghorn like we are. And then the other thing I'd really throw out a pitch for at the bottom of the list of in the menu there is a contact us. Contact us. Just reach out. Let us know what you want to see us do. Let us know what what you're passionate about, and what your moment your change was for pronghorn, and let us get involved with it. I think those are the two biggest things that we'd ask for you. Follow us on social media. And I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, if all else fails, just put your email in there as a contact, and if you're not ready to join right now, hopefully you will in the future. But at least we'll let you know what's going on in your state and projects that are coming up, and what we are doing as an org.
Well,
And what I would add to that is everybody contact someone else,
Yep.
right?
yeah.
Not every pronghorn advocate in the country is going to listen to this podcast, right? Unfortunately for you.
Sorry, Randy.
Sorry, Randy.
I'm working on that.
Yeah.
But realistically, talk to your hunting buddies for sure, and your neighbors, and whoever's got an interest in pronghorn. Help us spread that word. There's a lot of value in you joining, but also, can you get someone else to join?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask one other question before we wrap up. Brock sent me a draft of the logo you guys were working on, and I can't remember what he
Oh,
I should look it up on my phone.
Brachiosaurus.
Yeah, he said something like, "Is this a little bit too much?" And I'm like, Brock, that's a 150-inch pronghorn if you measured it on a scoring system. Yeah, I think it's a bit much, but hey, whatever. Well, even the new logo that I think you guys finalized, if I ever see a pronghorn that big, I might wet my pants before I can get a shot off. But
I love that you brought this up, because we went through, obviously a lot of other things going on, but it was a good month at least of back and forth drafts. I presented the guys a logo and tweaks, and Brock, can you make it bigger? Okay,
more
bigger,
prongs,
bigger. It's and I love his. I mean, gosh, Brock has been such a. For those that don't know Brock, I mean, he really has carried the torch with the entire board, and is sometimes to the point of me thinking he's nagging like my wife. But we need those leaders and members on these boards that keep us in line, because it is, like you said, time is a very valuable asset, and it's easy to get distracted by other things. And he's been very helpful to keep us on track with Eric and Dean to get this launched. And when he gets his big Brachiosaurus shirt with the pronghorn, I don't think the thing could lift its head by the end, but we'll make sure. Maybe that'll be a sticker we'll release at some point.
There's no fence on earth this pronghorn could get on.
There's not. The prongs that he showed me on that thing, if that pronghorn put its head down, it could plow fields.
He said diggers. Just call them diggers.
But I really like the new logo. Don't get me wrong. It's really cool, but I'm hoping I see a buck like that someday.
That'll be part of our genetic studies.
He's got it all. He's got mass, he's got length, he's got prong, and he just is looking at you like, Don't you
Oh,
dare, pal. He's got that
Not
look
today.
like,
He's just on the other side of private, like they all
Yeah.
are.
yeah, he's got that like, bring it on. You want some of this? That's
Yeah.
kind of his look. So,
Yeah.
but hey, I just before we wrapped up, I wanted people
I
to
appreciate
to
that.
know if
That
Yeah,
there's
is,
no,
yeah,
I think we're
yeah.
all glad you got that one in there.
those
Brock
are
enjoyed
all
it.
the
So
fun adventures that come with volunteering and orgs, and corralling everybody's perspective and opinions, and it's a fun and interesting part of the experience.
yeah.
That was crazy. It took us a long time to get our logo. I mean, you would think that you should be
no.
able to, get that done in, a week, or I don't know. It was way over a month, I think, probably closer to 2 months. But it's just little things too, and oh, there's one of the horns had a little white spot on it, and we couldn't figure out what that was. Oh, that was reflecting light, but it didn't look like that, and back and forth and back and forth. And as an organization, the ones I'm involved with, we always want to do things first rate.
Hmm.
We want to be a first rate organization, get everything done correctly, don't cut any corners, no frills, but do it right.
Yeah. Well, you guys did a great job, and I know there's going to be nothing but great things ahead. And even though we're down to just one of the 12 remaining species of pronghorn on this planet, uh, or on this continent, I'm glad you guys are there advocating for them. And I hope everyone listening goes and checks it out. Pronghorns with an S. I got that right, Eric?
Yep, you got it.
.org. Uh, and give what you can, whether it's your time, your talent, your money, or a combination of that. The cause of pronghorn and the future of pronghorn depends on us. What did Roosevelt say? The wildlife and its habitat cannot speak for itself, so we must and we will. You guys are doing that, and I'm forever grateful for people like all of you and your fellow, Brock, and your fellow board members. And I hope that we can have you guys back on here in a year or so and just have a little bit of reflection on what the first year of the public part, once you open the doors for business, uh, there'll be a bunch of laughs about, man, I wish we would have known that, or I wish we would have,
Oh yeah.
who thought that was a good
already
idea,
already
or
plenty of those.
Yeah.
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 So,
Well, hopefully we were wrong about our estimates, and we've put 6-figure, 7-figure projects on the ground
Yeah.
too. So
yeah.
we'll see.
Well, if you find that potential donor, you tell me who it is.
Yeah.
I'll I'll bring a pen and a self-addressed envelope. Mail it right here. You just sign that check. I'll fill in the amount. People wonder why I lost so many CPA clients. Hey, you hunt, right? Oh yeah, I hunt a lot. Well, let me just come sit down here. I'm not going to charge you for this little bit of advice, but the more that you donate, the more you get back.
Yeah.
They'd look
Well,
at
ain't that the truth? Jeez.
yeah, they'd look at me kind of funny, but I that's where I learned how hard to push and how hard not to push. If they called me and said, "Hey, Newberg, can you send our files to another CPA firm?" I knew I pushed a little too hard. But well, guys, thanks so much. Looking forward to
Thank
all
you, Randy.
this. Appreciate being somewhat along for the inside ride of being a bit of a sounding board and getting sent logos of the
Bronchosaurus.
prongosaurus or whatever you'd call him, prong rex, or I don't know, but it's been fun to watch, and whatever our platforms can do to help, just count us in.
Hopefully
Well,
next
thanks
year
for all
we'll
the
be
support.
talking about projects and hunting stories.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hold you to that, guys.
All
So
right.
stand by.
Book it. Done deal.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.